My question is for Mr. Rhodes. You spoke about the MTCC's self-sustaining beyond 2019. I was not clear on the structure of the MTCC insofar as how the coordinating center in London is to continue its activities. What's going to happen to that coordinating center in 2019, and how is it going to obtain its financing beyond the life of the project?
Thank you for that question. A very good question. We've talked about the importance of what MTCCs do over the next 2 to 3 years to make themselves self-sustaining. Another key part is what IMO does over the next 2 to 3 years to continue to support not just MTCCs but other initiatives on energy efficiency, climate change. I can't give you a direct answer because those decisions have not been made at IMO in terms of long-term continued support. But what I can say is that those discussions are taking place and they're seeking answers to that question of what happens beyond 2019. IMO, of course, has a very important role to play to continue to support initiatives like the MTCCs. What form that comes in and what role other organisations like the EU will play beyond 2019 is yet to be clarified. But the discussions are taking place. I can't give a direct answer there because the decisions have not been made yet. Okay. Thank you for that question.
Hi, good morning. I have 6 questions, and I'm going to break it down into 3. Let's start at the beginning. In concept and in philosophy, I think we all understand what this is about, and in real terms, we all understand the 2-degree rise in temperature and the effects that it would have. However, in terms of starting a think tank on solutions, I didn't get a real sense of London, and maybe this is directed at Mr. Rhodes. If we are to build capacity within developing countries, we need to have a target. We can't all sit down here and develop needs analysis or do needs analysis because we're diversified as a region. So my first question is, what exactly is our target? Because we need to, what does, I noticed missing from the first map in the first presentation was any MTCs in Europe or the United States. So maybe it's just an omission. So my first question is, in terms of a general target, has this wheel been invented already? Has there been some standard set in Europe? Or, yes, that's right, from London. There's no squiggly line going to the United States, nor is there one going to Europe. So the first question is, has there been a target benchmark, something set in the more developed parts of the world that we can look towards? Thank you. First question.
First answer. Okay. Thank you for that question. You talk about targets in terms of regulatory targets. If you've been following, different discussions at Marine Environment Protection Committee meetings and other intergovernmental forums, there has been discussion about setting certain targets on things like sulfur emissions. At present, these discussions are ongoing. We don't have very clear targets for the shipping industry as yet, but watch this space. Those discussions are ongoing in terms of setting clear targets. You talk about other regions such as North America, such as Europe. Those regions are outside the scope for this particular project. We're specifically focused on the developing regions. But of course, you know, there are initiatives within North America, within Europe, in terms of clear targets and, you know, national governments having to commit to those targets. So there are templates that we can take. How applicable they are to the developing regions, that's where it becomes very tricky, because to have those targets, to be able to reach those targets, you have to have the capacity in place. The targets you set have to be realistic. So it's what kind of capability do the national governments have to enforce them. So yes, we have things to learn from the more developed countries, but we also have to keep in mind the realities of what countries are capable of actually implementing. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, thank you. It at least gives the framework for an answer. So can I ask, as well, the first MTCC, that those at least will be made available so that we know where the sky is, and we know we probably just want to hit the stratosphere, but at least we know where the sky is. Thank you very much, Mr. Wood. The second question is,
if I may just add, what we must also recall is that the North American region, for example, is already an emissions control area. They have access to the technology that we are aspiring to. So in terms of the focus of this project, is really to bridge the gap within these regions.
thank you for that. The second question relates to directly to Marple Annex 6. Marple Annex 6 is one of its key instruments, sets up the issue of the establishment of EUDIs, EUIs, etc. And it has been left open to the ship owner to a certain extent to come up with their desired operational index based on a design index of the rating for the engines. My question is, in terms, if we take the EEMP, the MTCC management plan, as the basis of a framework for addressing capabilities and addressing transfer of technologies, is there some parameter in terms of us collecting data? I mean, we need to be collecting data because the end result we're looking for is to either stabilize the global temperature at 1 degree or reduce it. So is there any connect that has been established between the vaguities of the EMP, EMP, correct, and what we're shooting for in terms of discussing in our work groups capabilities and technology transfer? Because none of us here build engines, as far as I know, in the Caribbean. Nobody's building any engines in the Caribbean, so we all get them from Europe and the United States.
Yeah, I'll answer that. Okay, so as of now, the three main things, we'll talk more about it tomorrow, which is EEDI, SEEMP, and EEOI. So Energy Efficiency Design Index, which is again set up by IMO, where it gives guidelines on what should be the EEDI, that Design Index on Energy Efficiency, which is again reducing in 3 stages. And the next MEPC session may introduce the 4th. So there is a factor which is reduction factor, which is bringing it down. Like suppose if I am a ship owner and my ship is operating today at an index which is acceptable under that, but I have to still invest in technologies or operational measures where I have to bring my EEOI below that value. So if as of now, if I am below that index, I will operate till 2020, but beyond 2020, I have to invest in some technology or change the engines on board or do something about it, because if I have to operate beyond that date, my EEDI should be less than. So there are established targets in that, and they are coming up with a new baseline for reduction factors. That is on design part of ship. So SEEMP, which is Shipboard Energy Efficiency Management Plan, it addresses the operational part of it for ships existing before 2013, right? So including new and old ship. So that operational part has introduced another key indicator which is called Energy Efficiency Operational Index, EEOI. And that is also what we are trying to do through one of our pilots is collect the data which is required to calculate that EEOI for each ship for a voyage, and then based on, because whenever we have any technology in use or not, which we can, or a technology which can be making a business case of that, introduced to that ship owner, which will bring down the EEOI of that vessel. So I think I answered your question where you're thinking about how these targets will be, whether it's a fixed target or it is a moving target, right?
Well, we know it's a moving target, or should I? Yeah, maybe you can answer that. I mean, from my understanding is that it's a moving target up until now.
It is a moving target and it is moving towards the reduction of emissions. And one thing, if I can add to that, is when we are talking of like capacity building now, where we talk of SEEMP, right? So most of the SEEMPs are done by, as of today, are done by classification societies or consultants, right? So this is again a capacity building initiative for us as administrators. What capacity do we have when we go as a port state or as a flag state to see the authenticity of SEEMP? What has happened with, okay, maybe I can mention this. My thesis was on the effectiveness of SEEMP on board ships, which it's a sad, but I must tell you, it is nothing more than a document as of now for a ship owner to place on board to tick one of the pages, right? But that is again an initiative for us to build a capacity as port state maybe, where we can go and see whether those operational measures are actually in effect or not.
Thank you. My last question. In our breakout sessions and our work programs, I believe that the university is asking us to engage our acumen to look at this whole thing, as you said, with capacity building, right, the performance, sustainability, and renewable. I don't know if this is a pre-question to our information for the breakout sessions, but there is a connectivity between available fuels, engines, and ships. Maybe the question is too early, but are we also to take into consideration the available fuel sources that we have regionally, and if so, is there some action plan with respect to the control of the quality of fuels within the region? Thank you.
Okay, so that's a very relevant question now, where this is the first stage of exercise which we are doing today. So, for example, in our case of Trinidad, we have a clear opportunity of providing LNG as alternative fuel. What we would like to see is coming out as that opportunity exists, but where do we need capacity initiatives? Do we have infrastructure? Do we have LNG bunkering capacities? And if no, what we need to address? What do we need to do to address those? So that should be one outcome of one of the, maybe it's under technology or economic, because clearly there are studies which have clear incentives for ship operators to go for alternative fuel if they have to go into future. So there is an opportunity nationally for us which can go into region, and that's another thing which came as a bit strange to us when we were visiting Panama, actually, with all due respect, where Panama is already targeting to be a regional LNG bunkering focal point. That came to us as awareness, where I think we have the capacity to supply LNG to ships coming to Caribbean, right? So why we can't do it? That's a question for us. And that is the first step when we are doing our needs analysis as a capacity initiative. Why we can't do it? And then come out to roadmap that what we need to do it. Thank you.
I have to the answers to the question. First on the third question, and then back to the second question we asked earlier on EEOI benchmarking data gathering. For the alternative fuels, we had a seminar here which was presented by the MEN BMW from Copenhagen in the research and development facilities. It was online live, it was a webinar, and along with Methanex, the methanol. So they already have dual fuel engines in operation. 7 vessels operating at the moment. They're actually taking methanol from the Methanex plant in Point Lisas. And we actually presented on the engines, on methanol engines. We are aware of the dual fuel engines using LNG, but for the transfer of technology, either we look at the new engines or we use uptake methods, either technology or operational, to actually help with energy efficiency. To be in line with like the new vessels, you'll be aware that from 2013, mandatory that vessels built after 2013 must be in line with IMO's requirements for EEDI limits values. So different vessels have their different EEDIs. And once in compliance, and with the implementation of the SEEMP, they issued their IEEC. And from the transfer of technology, what the MEN and BMW experts actually say from Copenhagen was, we actually asked them that. So they gave us a straight answer. We asked, is there any chance of actually modifying the engines, existing engines? And what they said was, yes, of course. It's very difficult. And I said, what is the cost? Based on your cost analysis, they said that it would be cheaper to buy one brand new engine. So those are some realities we're looking at. But from the pilot projects, one of the pilot project actually captures the methods currently used on vessels operating in the region, either using the technology methods to improve energy efficiency. I'll give you an example. I know you're aware of this. Out at sea, once a wind engine is full away out at sea, we use the waste heat recovery unit to run our exhaust gas boilers. Thereby, we can run our turbine generators using steam from the waste heat gas, producing steam in the exhaust gas boiler, and we can take off our generators. And likewise, we can clutch in out using technology the shock generators, thereby saving fuel from the generators, diesel generators. Those are some methods we're actually looking at. And like data gathering, like Captain Sujit mentioned earlier, and we thank Mr. Alfred for his partnership in collaboration with the MTCC Caribbean. He actually sent out a notice on the voluntary data collection from vessels for fuel consumption. Not only fuel consumption, if you present tomorrow, I'll be presenting on the pilot projects, and you will have a very deep insight into what data we're actually collecting, the analysis method we're actually using, how we're actually calculating the EEOI, and then we'll be collating all the data for vessels within different months according to IMO. It's according to one of the MTCC circulars, resolutions, circular. It's should be within 10 to 10 voyages or within a 1 year period. And then we actually can benchmark. We come up with a benchmark and see where we actually lie for our EEOI. And make sure through technology transfer, we can actually recommend to the region, through the regional bodies, partners, to actually recommend to vessels calling into ports through the use of also through partnership with ports authorities and administration, we can actually recommend to these vessels what type of active methods, technology or operations they can use to bring the EEOI below those levels.
I'm just cutting it short because we have our agenda for today.